joined as we are on Tuesdays at this time by the elite SEC writer for the Bleacher Report, Barrett Sallee. Barrett, an interesting opening weekend in the SEC.
Yeah, it was eventful, that's to say the least, and that's kind of surprising considering some of the events that actually transpired. But, hey, what do we root for in this business? We root for storylines, and we got a lot of them, that's for sure.
You're not kidding. I mean, some disappointments, some wild, some crazy turns within ball games. Last night to wrap things up, that Ole Miss Florida State game, I was tempted to. There wasn't really much for me to be checking out. Otherwise, I was tempted to try to find something else. When it was 28-6, it's like, man, Ole Miss looks great. And then Florida State and DeAndre Francois just went crazy, and Chad Kelly decided to revert to Chad Kelly a couple of times from in the past, and he'll throw it anywhere. And that became I guess sort of a typical finish to the weekend.
Yeah, it was very appropriate. I think Ole Miss. The thing with Ole Miss is even on their good possessions, when they scored, they were only 3-minute possessions, which is something they try to do. But when you're having an inexperienced defense going in, and then 6 of those guys get hurt, and you're running guys out there that aren't even on the flip card on the 2 deep, you're gonna have issues. And so, I think Hugh Freeze, when he thinks back at that game, he's going to be really upset. But I'm not sure there's anything they can do because they were playing guys that weren't supposed to play.
Oh yeah.
And they were just worn flat out. So, it's I'm sure frustrating, but there's really nothing you can do if you run an up-tempo offense like that, unless you have depth for days defensively. And really, only the top 5 or 7 teams from a recruiting perspective can develop that depth. I'm not even sure if Auburn has that depth, and they're really good defensively. So it was just one of those days for Ole Miss.
Wow, I mean, so many storylines around the league. You had disappointing victories. I mean, it looked early on. I mean, Tennessee was going to be sort of people snickering at Tennessee for winning. Well, there are other teams now that wish they had. Florida wasn't overly impressive. But I mean, then you had, speaking of turnarounds, Kentucky was up 35-10, if I'm not mistaken, before they lose. I mean, it's just crazy, some of the things that went on around the league.
Yeah, I think a couple of things on that is, the SEC actually played pretty good teams. I mean, they didn't play a non-Power 5 team, and they played some pretty good Group of 5 teams. That State's a good team. Southern Miss is a good team. USA is not great, but pretty decent. I think really what doesn't get talked about with that is that I think a lot of the kids that go to those schools realize that, if they have maybe a chance to be a lower tier person on an SEC board or walk on, that's a stupid decision to make when you can go to a place like Southern Miss and start for 3 years, because you're going to have more experience and your professional outlook doesn't change at all. So I think the good schools like the App State and Bowling Greens and other schools that have had some success at the Group of 5 level realized that a while ago and have good players that can compete with them.
Well, one of the big stories around the conference was the quarterbacks going in, and there were a couple of exclamation points, and there are a lot of questions still.
Yeah, especially at Auburn, I don't know what that game plan was. I know Gus says that Sean White's the starter now.
Yeah, well, didn't he just say the same thing? How many times does a head coach have to announce who the starting quarterback is on consecutive weeks, or with no change in between, to announce that it's still the same guy?
Yeah, it's bizarre. That whole thing was strange. And I think Texas showed you how a 2-quarterback system works when you define roles. And there was no definition on Auburn's game plan. And really, I think the coaching staff, I think if they watch tape, there's no way they can come to any conclusion other than they lost that game for that team, because the coaches did. When Jeremy Johnson threw that pick, I think it was in the 3rd quarter. It's like, why are you even putting him in? You were moving the football. Texas had a plan. It was clear what everybody was on, and everybody was on board. Auburn, it looked like they were just throwing stuff against the wall, and that's really inexplicable. And if that coaching staff doesn't realize that coaching lost that game, then they shouldn't have jobs, because it was as clear as day. And it's a shame too, because really, you can't play better defense than what Auburn did. I mean, you literally cannot play better defense. The only play that worked was that back shoulder fade, and there are like 4 quarterbacks in the country who can make that throw consistently.
Oh, absolutely.
And you still had them beat. And, you know, it was, if you're an Auburn fan, you should be furious with that coaching staff right now.
You know, and the talk of the second half. Yes, Auburn had 200-plus yards in the second half, still subbing quarterbacks with no rhyme or reason at any time mid-drive.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and then, you know, I understand why they decided to go for it a couple times, you know, later in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And really, in retrospect, maybe they shouldn't have, but you can't really fault them for that. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Auburn now is, okay, get off the mat, figure out what you can do, because, you know, the defense obviously is really good, and if they can define those quarterback roles, they're going to be fine. Like, they can contend for the SEC West because they've got a championship-level defense. And I think they can have a championship-level offense if they define those roles, like Texas did with Bouchel and Tyrone Fluke.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn can do that. They literally have that ability. The coaching staff, I don't know why they didn't beforehand, because they had 9 months to do it. They better do it this week, because, you know, you have a chance to salvage a pretty good season.
Meanwhile, LSU, I mean, we'd heard Brandon Harris has turned things around. Look for the offense to change. That was exactly the same LSU.
It was the exact same. And I think it was a clear indication that Les Miles didn't take November as a wake-up call. He took it as a chance to dig his heels in and be the same old stubborn Les Miles that he's always been. That's a big difference now compared to Auburn, because you can't change if you're Les Miles. You cannot change offensive philosophies, you know, mid-season,
mm-hmm.
when players are, you know, watching tape and preparing for opponents. And so, yeah, it's the same old Les, same old problem. You know, it wasn't like Wisconsin had a huge lead. They were up 13 points. And even that hole was too big, really, for that offense to dig out of. Now, the defense helped with the pick six, but you can't live like that. I mean, good coaches now recognize that, you know, sometimes even the great defenses give up 450 yards to good offenses and give up 30 points a game. You have to be able to deal with that offensively. And it's not that Les Miles and LSU can't. It's that Les Miles won't let them do that. And that's a huge problem.
Oh, there's no question. We're talking with Barrett Sallee, lead SEC writer for the Bleacher Report, here on the Tuesday edition of The Drive. The other thing that has always sort of been a staple in college football is you can't play true freshman quarterbacks. Oh yeah? Well, a lot of it though depends on who do you have around you. Jalen Hurts has a little bit of talent around him. Jacob Eason has Nick Chubb. It's a little bit different for them than it is Shea Buechele, who, I mean, he had to take more on his shoulders. But wow, amazing to see the performances from some true freshman quarterbacks.
Yeah, and Shea Buechele's got him some talent around him too. I think one of the best things that I saw all weekend was the fact that Charlie Strong recognized that he needed to change himself, his offensive philosophy, and literally stood there hands off when the offense had the ball and said, "Throw and Gilbert, go do your thing."
Mm-hmm.
Like, it took him 2 seasons to realize that. Les Miles hasn't done that in 10 years. That's why Texas, to me, is legitimately a national championship contender, because they've got players. But yeah, I mean, Buechele was awesome. Hurts was sort of a mixed bag. I mean, obviously he had a lot of success. They really made it easy for him, and that's what good offensive coordinators do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Lane does, and I think you'll see them build upon that over the next couple of weeks. Sort of like they did with Blake Sims, because it's not like Blake Sims was, as ready to be a quarterback as some other folks, and so, that was good to see. And then Jacob Eason, look, he had a couple of really nice passes he had some success. But I think the biggest thing is, even when he didn't complete passes, when he did draw PI or just threw in completion, North Carolina was dropping 2 safeties. And they dropped 1 every single time Grayson Lambert was in the game. So North Carolina already had, that kind of respect for Easton after just a few passes. And that was a big reason why Nick Chubb had some success. It's a big reason why they played the way they did in the second half.
So, I heard a stat a while ago. You were talking about the quality of the opponents. We talked about it a little last week. Heard somebody saying it's and check and see if this is right. But somebody told me that this is the SEC was the first conference ever to beat 3 top 25 opponents in the same weekend in the regular season ever. So
I think that is accurate.
So that's
and it's. I mean, look,
that helps the 7-7. That helps you feel a little better about being 500 the opening weekend.
Well, here's the thing: is conference prestige. It's not a big deal anymore. I saw Ohio State win a national championship in 2014 out of a really bad Big Ten. It doesn't mean Ohio State's not good. I think the SEC last year, everyone ranted and raved about the bowl record. The SEC wasn't that good last year. It wasn't. I think it's more, I think I'm trying to do this, and I think a lot of folks need to just focus on the team. Like, Alabama's a really good team. Louisville's a really good team. Florida State is too. Texas is. Georgia is. Those are still good teams, no matter what conference they play in. You try to tell me that Houston's not good because they play in the AAC, I'm going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
They're just good teams elsewhere, and it really, I think, because a lot of these schools play each other in out-of-conference games, and I think because you've seen teams have ultimate success out of bad conferences now, Florida State in 2013, Ohio State in 2014, the idea of that being a huge deal, I think, is really only it's a talking point, and it's something that people sort of are programmed to kind of revert to, and I don't think it really matters as much now as it did 5-10 years ago.
Looking at this week, obviously nothing compared to last week, but there are a few interesting ball games. I mean, Tennessee, Virginia Tech seems to be getting all the hype, but Arkansas at TCU, and then a couple of conference matchups, Florida, Kentucky, and Gainesville, South Carolina at Mississippi State. What jumps out at you this week?
Well, Tennessee, just because I want to see if they're going to man up in the line of scrimmage, because they got worked by App State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just, on both sides, they had nothing, and Virginia Tech's got a little bit of a better talent level than App State, although App State's really good. So that, and then really, I hate to say it's a must-win game for a coach in his job status. It would help Mark Stoops a lot if he beat Florida.
You're not kidding.
Not only losing to Southern Miss, but the way they lost to Southern Miss, that'll get a hat passed around real quick from some big money boosters to try to cover that buyout number. So, Kentucky's used to having problems in November. If they start having them in September, I look at the schedule, there's 2 wins on that schedule. Legitimately, that's where you see them at this point. So they need to have something for Florida, because it's not like Florida was crisp either. What
do you think of Arkansas TCU?
Arkansas is just not very. They don't have the players. They have so many offensive holes. They had so many issues on the offensive line last week. They have so many problems at the back end of their defense. TCU to me is the type of team that can sort of do what Texas Tech did to Arkansas a couple times, when they just get Arkansas into a situation where they have to go win a football game with offense, and they couldn't do that consistently with Brandon Allen and all those other stars they had last year. I don't see how they can do it this year with the group they have.
That's going to be fun. Maybe not as crazy. It'll be a little calmer, I would assume, by the time we talk to you next week.
Hopefully there's actually a starting quarterback at Auburn at that point.
Yeah, maybe they'll only play, one a series this weekend. How about thinking of doing that?
That'd probably be a good start. It's probably
really
a good philosophy to live.
Barrett, we really appreciate it. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, see you guys.